Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order. At this time, I need a motion to approve Bill 113.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Wille and seconded by Councilmember Eoff. Discussion, Councilmember Wille.
I think a key question that we have, most all of us do have questions, and whether we, as Councilmember Kanuha said, that try to remain in place where we are right now and look and answer some of those questions. And do we, what my intent was to hold us in place in my bill. If there are those who feel that I'm not doing that as well as it could be done, I'm open to friendly amendments. I just want to emphasize that whenever my experience for 25 years is where you have a committee and you're leaving the door open to what you're concerned about, it walks in the door while you're working on it. So I know Councilmember Yoshimoto had the same questions and concerns, and do we wait and figure this out? I think the U.S. Supreme Court in the case Taylor versus Maine basically said that the state or the local government can, where things are uncertain, say hold and not be waiting till there's conclusive evidence that it's appropriate to draw the line. I do want to discuss several of the things in my bill. Again, it's exempt. It prohibits open air cultivation. I don't think that if you have a field of whatever kind of flowers versus if it's vanilla, that somehow the impact on the soil is somehow okay with the open air flowers unless that's been really tested, versus the food crops, so the bees or the insects that are affected, say if you're using Roundup Ready pesticides. I do have a registration, I do have a department. Our research and development is our ag department. I actually tried to propose a charter amendment that we have a separate ag department. I felt that was very important, but the persuasion of the administration was, Margaret, this way we could get a lot more work and have people doing it rather than setting up a whole separate administration. I am focused on the soil. I am focused on the ag. I think in terms of enforcement, I have that in the ad hoc committee. I think we can move forward. I did meet with the Mitch Roth, who's our prosecutor, and he agreed that he felt that was appropriate on our taro, on our coffee. We don't say how this is some regulatory enforcement. You can, under the authority in this bill, someone could go to court. Someone, the authority here under the Hawaii State Constitution, Article 11, Section 9, environmental rights. Any person may enforce the rights against any party, public, private, through appropriate legal proceedings. So it's not like there's nothing there, but I think that in terms of laws, many laws you read of, where each law you see that regulatory. So I'm taking step one. I think when we look at enforcement, we have to look at finance issues, what we need, how we go about it. I think yesterday we addressed the same concern in terms of inspectors. We tend to be, say we're complaint driven, and yet we have got, maybe 4 inspectors in cleaning. I do think that's an issue. So again, I'm not saying there aren't issues left, but I wanted to get something in place. And otherwise, we are open the door. Now, according to the multinational giants, they have no interest in being here, but I attended that GMO Summit. And all of the people they came that were the pro-GMO, independent, nationally known, internationally known, that was paid for by the Crop Improvement Association, which is the 5 biotechs. Okay, so I just want to say, in terms of trust, I don't have any trust. And I think that let's do this in a way that we can hold in place, unless we want to be where they are in Kauai. You know, I went there. I even looking around and talking to surfers and others where they say, you know, where we used to surf, which is below there, now there are all of, you know, all the urchins are dead, all of this. I don't know that where that's all happening, but I do know. I'm from Waimea, and my sister town of Waimea, everybody's ill. The same thing in Latin America. Can't we learn from what's happening in other places, the other 60 countries? So I did, again, work to put in place what I felt addressed concerns such as Chair Yoshimoto's. I did it as best I could. I'm open to nuances, how to do it better. I do think that when we call up industry people and say, okay, what are the issues here, what are the problems, that we need to do it from independent people. I'll do it.
Thank you. Councilmember Onishi?
Thank you. Just a thought that, you know, Ms. Willie mentioned about water, you know, soil and stuff like that. So then, when I looked at her bill too, I figured this should have been in the ag committee, but then that's okay. I just wanted to kind of.
I tried.
And she, yeah, she said she tried the other day. She told me that she tried, but that's okay. Can I get Eric Weinert? And then later on I'll ask for your comments. But what happened is the Papaya Association came to see me and they wanted me to do an exemption, or I'm sorry, to Bill 113. And that would be to take out, I guess, the parts about the papaya guys. Okay, because what I guess the feeling was that this would be like kind of taking care of them separately from the other farmers. And then also, what's going to happen is if there is, if any other disease comes in that attacks the papaya industry, they won't be able to do anything. So basically, this is their lifespan. Okay, and so what I want to do is, before I make the amendment, maybe have Eric to explain a little bit of why you folks came to see me again.
Thank you. My name is Eric Weinert. I'm the General Manager for Calavo Groves. We're the largest papaya exporter of rainbow papaya from Hawaii Island to the U.S. mainland. So we sell Hawaii's papaya all across the United States and bring tax revenue and employ a lot of big supporters of the papaya industry. And our feeling, we do not want the papaya exemption. If we feel if it's bad, if GMOs are bad, then they're bad. Without a public endorsement, without this group and individually, if anyone votes for this anti-GMO legislation, if you can't come out and say publicly with a public endorsement that GMO rainbow papaya is safe, then this anti-GMO legislation, anything against GMOs, will be the headline. Hawaii County bans GMOs. And it will taint our reputation selling a wholesome, nutritious fruit. And that's really our point. So we don't want to be exempted here. If this council feels that GMOs are unsafe and you feel confident that you have the science on your side, to feel that it's...
Yeah, I don't know if we're moving into testimony. I'm kind of getting...
I'm just saying why we want the...
you know, if you can be a little bit more direct in your question, because if not, I can open up. I mean, everybody's going to ask for testimony.
Sure, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess, Eric, just explain to them, well, you kind of explained already. So basically, it's like what they mentioned to me was that if the council feels that GMO is bad for the people, then why is papaya going to be exempt? And so that's why they came to me and saying that they wanted this amendment in. And so I'm going to make a motion to amend Bill 113 with the communication number 393.1. So I'm going to need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so everyone has this. So basically, on Bill 113, any part where it says about the papayas is going to be stricken out. Okay, and so in the exemption part, we're only going to have number 1. Well, in fact, not going to have, it's just exemption. They're going to have the persons engaged in cultivation and so forth. Okay, and then everything where it says papaya will be stricken out. So if you look at your amendment, all the papaya parts is all taken out. Okay?
Any discussion on that, Councilmember Wille?
As I understand this, instead of having like a separate paragraph on papaya, it's a group, so they're not singled out. They would still be those persons who are engaged in cultivation, propagation, development of genetically geared crops, which would include papaya, shall be exempt, so it's the same treatment. It's not that, he's not saying that if you're growing papayas right now that you're suddenly doing something illegal. We're not singling them out for discussion. And I think that helps to remove the taint. I would, I'm just reading this right this second, but I feel this is I'm taking this as a friendly amendment. I don't see it as something negative to them. I think it's to the current growers. And again, I'm still very much in support of the ad hoc committee so that questions going forward we have. Now, again, I'm looking at it in like the 2-minute break we had right now, but that's how I interpret this. And Eric, can you turn your buzzer off? Just there's a. So I just want to hear what others have to say. That's how I'm open to this. I'm open either way. I think I'm a little bit broader, but I understand why there are benefits to not having it be single out. I do want to just point out in the purpose of my bill, I did explain. I felt that in terms of the level of testing, in terms that I did give reasons why I was. But I yield. I want to hear what others have to say.
Councilmember Yoshimoto?
Okay, so the question then to Ms. Wille, since you're the author of the bill. This amendment basically allows what we're doing now, but doesn't allow for any expansion. Is that your reading of it?
That's my reading.
Okay. Is that...
That's why I separated out papaya. No, that was why I separated out papaya to give them total freedom. But, well, okay, reading it, well, I gave them, they are not restricted in terms of current location, in terms of future papaya growers. This would put them into a grandfather clause.
Grandfather clause that allows what currently is being grown today is okay, right?
Yes. And they could continue,
and they could continue their modification should a new disease, virus crop up in the future, that they can still use their...
Yes, but it would not bring in new papaya, GMO papaya growers in other locations.
Okay.
They will go into their pluses and minuses from an industry point of view.
Right. Yeah, I'm just thinking this through just
I
like you.
am too.
Yeah.
I
The wheels
am
are
too.
turning, it's just I'm trying to make sure that we can...
So, again, I also, what's important to me, I mean, I I tried to do what I felt was maximizing their choices as a papaya industry. So I am open to this, and I just think hearing other council members, I'm not considering this as an opposition, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
There are pluses and minuses both ways.
Okay. And, well, I'll just stick to, I'm good on the amendment then, as far as right now, but I have more further comments as to the main motion later on.
Councilmember Eoff?
So in other words, papaya farmers would still be exempt because they're currently, would be included in the group of current cultivators. Is that what your intention was? That you would continue to be exempt, but you wouldn't specifically discuss papaya in this bill?
I have not seen the amendment. I was hoping that papaya would have no exemption. It's either good or bad, or this body come out with a public endorsement of papaya's safety. Because to not do that would be tainting our industry. And we'll go down now or later. If it's bad, take us out.
I'm not sure that's the direction this council has been discussing. And I don't think that's what this amendment does, actually, because the way I'm reading it is it just takes you out of as being described specific or especially in this bill. Any persons engaged in the cultivation, propagation, or development of genetically engineered crops or plants in locations where genetically engineered crops or plants have been customarily cultivated, propagated, or developed by that person prior to the effective date of this article shall be exempt from this article.
And Councilmember Eoff, I would request that we try to keep the discussion on the council instead of,
Okay, then I guess
because
I
we're
should be
discussing the
directing this
bill.
to
Mr.
Mr.
Onishi,
Onishi.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onishi. That's how I'm reading it, is that correct?
What is it? Well, again?
That although we're taking out the language that speaks about papayas specifically,
Right.
they would still be exempt under the provision of this bill.
Possibility, yes, in the exemption
The way it reads now.
section. Right.
And I also just want to clear up for the record is that when we did vote on Bill 109, personally I didn't vote it down because I was against its principles. I wanted to have one bill that we use as a template today to begin our discussion to get us more into a productive honing in on this bill. And it was to no disrespect for the intention of Bill 109, and I think whatever is good in Bill 109, Ms. Ford can still, or any of us, utilize as we progress with Bill 113. But with respect to Ms. Wille having brought this initiative forward to the council over the last many months, I felt that I would choose that bill to work with. So I just wanted to clear that up. And the other thing about the amendment to it, to Bill 109, we kind of couldn't get involved in further complicating where we stand today, trying to make progress on amending a bill and being able to adopt something. So I just wanted to state that. And I guess I'm not sure if this amendment is what you intended it to be, based on, there seems to be a little bit of misunderstanding, but I think it's okay if they're exempt. I want papaya farmers to be exempt. I don't want our discussion to lead us to having to determine whether GMO food is good or bad for us, or whether the papaya is more or less nutritional. I think we've had someone state that it's equal. So and I am more concerned about the large corporate farming practices as compared to papaya farming or any other farming that we may do here. So I'll yield, and that's the only question I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I too, I want to make sure that we don't inadvertently or unintentionally hurt an industry that we're not trying to do. And I think with the amendment, I think it moves closer to that for sure, where you just take it out, like let's not talk about it. You're either exempt or you're not. Basically, you can say almost the same thing, but it doesn't sound like that's actually what the papaya industry wants. So I'm not sure if Mr. Onishi, you want to sit down with them again and clarify, or?
Chair, may I answer that?
Sure.
Okay, they came to me telling me this is what they want. Okay, but see, I guess they want totally all out from the exemptions, take out everything.
Yeah, and that's what this does, right? I mean,
No,
there's
no, the whole thing in exemptions. So in section, like I guess the section 14 dash blank exemptions, they want the whole thing out.
Okay. So does that clarify that, and we can move on with discussion?
No, because then if we took that if we took that out, we took the exemption out, then nobody would be exempt.
But that's why I say, that's what they came to me for, okay? But then I'm just taking the papaya guys off, because that's what the Papaya Association came to me and saying that they want to be exempt totally from Bill 113. And
And
that's what
I feel like that's what you did here.
That's what I'm doing.
Which
Yes.
I understand, so
But
I'm a
then-
little bit confused though, because if we take out all the exemption, you guys are,
No,
yeah.
no, but then see, but in the exemptions, they possibly could still be under that section.
Right. Okay.
But I'm just asking.
Yeah, and remember, we have one person testifying for some papaya farmers, and there are a lot of papaya farmers, both GMO and non-GMO. Okay, I just want to remind you
But
guys
this is about the GMO.
that is about the GMO, but it's about papaya farmers and what, yeah. So
Yeah,
remember, okay.
Thank you, Andrea. I like what you did here. I felt that the papaya shouldn't be in here. It should just be that if you're operating and you want to be exempt, you're exempt, and not specifically say that. You know what I mean? Because in an inadvertent way, it kind of paints it, and I don't want to do that. So I will support the amendment. I'm still. I'll see you later.
Okay. Councilmember Ilagan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reading between the lines here, what I see, it's pretty much one for all for one. You don't wanna back up agriculture. And what this exemption does, it doesn't exempt you for future fields because that's what you took out. However, what it will hurt is the GM papaya industry. The reason why is because when you're growing GM papayas, there's the fungus, and you have to register in the area that you're currently at. When you have to transition out, technically that's illegal because that's not registered in. So technically once that fungus, when you have to transition, that's it, that's done. So that goes your industry. So you, by saying this, what I'm understanding is you want a declaration from this council saying that GM organisms are bad or good. You want it black and white. And as we understand, it's case by case. And we understand that we can't put a blanket over it. And I admire what you're doing because you don't want to say, give us this exemption. We don't want to say, let us be free. You're saying, if you want to put us down, make sure you also put down our brothers and sisters. That's what you're saying. And what I want to do is, as we have I feel like we did prove that organic papayas or conventional papayas and GM papayas are equivalent in nutritional value. That when I eat both of them, I will get the same result from both of them. But I do want to, because how much we already hurt the industry, I want to have the county compensate a marketing where we, as a county, promote the nutritional value of GM papayas. That we want to get your name back on that stool where it was before this ever happened. Because what we did to you, I feel, has caused your industry a lot of harm. And we want to make sure that we do look at GM case by case, because it's not the same all around. And that's how I feel.
Point of order. Mr. Ilagan,
You do not speak for the whole council.
This is for me, I can speak
Excuse
for
me,
the
Mr.
district that I
Ilagan.
represent.
Mr. Ilagan.
And this is what
Mr.
I'm
Ilagan,
doing.
I have a point of order.
Hey, this is
I have
not
a point
wait,
of order, Mr.
And
Point
this
of
is
order.
not
Point
the
of
time
order.
to
Point of order.
be interrupting
Point of
Councilmember
order.
We're
Ford.
gonna recess for 2 minutes.
You don't speak for me.
I have been ever so respectful to all this council.
You go.
For the rest of us, don't speak
You
for
don't
the
speak
rest of
for
us.
me either.
Again, we need to watch reality television.
Calling the meeting back to order. So I'd just like to remind everyone, when there's a point of order, let's listen to the point of order and then get back on track. So, there was-
By the way, Madam Chair, I still have the floor.
I know, but there was a point of order, so I need to hear the point of order.
Thank you. My point of order is that none of us can speak for anybody else on the council. And through Mr. Ilagan's discussion, he went on to how the county or the council had somehow damaged the GMO papaya industry. I don't agree with that. I will not state that. I don't accept it. Do not
So
speak
the
for
point of
us.
order is that we don't speak on behalf of the entire council. So when you address it, if you can say you would like to say.
I, as a council member, feel that it did impact you negatively. It did. And I, as a council member, feel that we should do our right part in that we should make things right. And now, I do want to say, we do gotta look at it case by case. And we can't put a blanket over this. So I can't support this at this time. I understand what you're trying to do, but we have to look at it with all sides. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the first round? No, so we're on second round and we'll be real quick. Okay,
I'll yield to that.
okay, Councilmember Kern.
I just realized that, while I do not want to, as me as a council member, do not want to inadvertently hurt the industry, when you take out section 2 in here that specifically says papaya, it basically prohibits any expansion of papaya. So I realize just reading this amendment, again, like it has a positive in a certain way where it takes the name out, but it will stifle that industry if this goes through to just what is existing. Where if you look at section 2, it could be prior or subsequent to this. So it gives that room for expansion and growth. So it's a double-edged sword in a way. I just wanted to, and I'm actually on the fence with which way to go because I think that there should be, if we're allowing it, there should be room for growth.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kanuha.
Yeah, it's the same concern I had as well, you know, the number 2 section. I mean, you want to take papaya completely out of this whole article, but I know I know Ms. Wille was trying to exempt papaya completely. And I think if you do that, if you completely take out section 2, there's no room, like Mr. Kern said, there's no room for any future growth, any expansion. So that's just throwing that out there to the rest of everybody, to Mr. Onishi. And is that really what we want to do? And personally, I don't think so. With the original intent of the bill.
Okay. Councilmember Onishi.
Yes, again, council members, the association came to me and this is what they wanted, okay? So we must understand, this is what they wanted, okay? And part of the discussion was that in case, with this bill right now, in case there's any other disease that attacks the papaya industry, they cannot do anything. So the industry goes down, no matter how much area you get to plant. If a disease comes in, they're gone. They cannot recover. Okay, or they're gonna have to treat it maybe with chemicals or whatever and this and that, and then there's gonna be more of a problem by doing that. Okay, so to me is that we support what their wishes are. And if they want it this way, then we say okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Wille?
I'm going to respond to him, but I then want to also go on in terms of, this was in my time. Okay, under my bill, without the amendments, it would allow the papaya industry to go on and plant where they are, in current locations or future locations. It would not prevent them from using their whatever genetically modified organisms in the future. What if we do the amendment, it puts the current farmers all sort of freedom to continue as they are, but it would not, if they'd be now in a grandfather, it would say, you all are in an exempted, but we're not bringing in more other papaya farmers. And you have to look at the word persons. That would include, their heirs and this, that, and the other. It doesn't necessarily say you, but, oh, you're not going to let my son or something like that. So I actually did have some papaya people talk to me in terms of something like this and not wanting to separate them out, and that by doing so that it did add a taint, and let's just have it be grandfather and everybody who's current do it, and then discuss it further in the ad hoc committee. But I felt, again, I kept trying to go with our initial discussion, where I felt everybody was at, pause, and leave those questions, and that I felt that drawing that line where we are now was important and is the precautionary principle. In other words, err on the side of conservation till you look at those other cases and look at the coexistence. So I felt strongly on that. And I do think, as Councilmember Ilagan said, there is a big difference between papaya and other things. I mean, that's where I've been studying, and I could bring people up to sort of really emphasize that distinction and the problems and what's going on where there's corn and wheat and cotton and soy. And right now, I did hand out a communication in terms of what's going on the federal level, and what Marty Crouch said. All new things are coming in, such as grasses, and grasses that spread and that could be, on a short term, look beneficial to the golf courses. We all live on a hill. It's on the coastal reef. It's really critical. And the way, and if you look at what I passed out, is basically that the USDA is abdicating its role to even review them and say it's outside of regulation. So that's why I'm saying let's stop where we are. I do think where you all who are doing papaya emphasize to us, we studied this for 12 years. We went through all these additional hoops to get into the Japanese market. I respected that, and so I'm open to it. I think that having a separate section, but I do think it's important that we all realize what we're doing. We are limiting, we're grandfathering them, rather than leaving it open other than registration. So, I will yield on that because I want to stay on this point and not get into anything else. I do have other comments, but I'll yield my time just so we really try to address the amendment.
Councilmember Yoshimoto?
Okay, so may I address Ms. Wille? Okay, so Ms. Wille, for the public's information, that as currently proposed with the amendment, with this amendment, people would have 90 days to register to get in within the scope of this code amendment, and then that registration basically starts the grandfathering ending. Correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. So that makes sense then, because like what you're saying, if there's all these other different kind of strains that want to come in, they can't, right?
Or we're sort of holding them in with this amendment, it more purely does
Right.
sort of the holding in place while we move forward. I leaning towards, and I'm sort of really looking at respect for Councilmember Kern and Ilagan is, let's not, let's leave it more wide open, so.
Okay. And then have the ad hoc committee convene to see if there's any further refinement. So this is, okay, I got you.
Okay.
Councilmember Eoff?
So, I know Mr. Yoshimoto just asked the same thing, but I just for myself wanted to ask you, Ms. Wille, adopting the amendment would prevent any expansion of any kind of GMO crop. It would exempt those that are currently here to the locations where they currently are growing.
Yes, it would. In other words, everybody that's got a job now and doing it now, they can continue. And again, I want to just remind everyone, the word person is not necessarily, that read how that's worded. So it's not like, oh, my son, or I'm transferring, or I die, and somebody else. But basically, that operation, that entity could continue in its current location. And if they're using other gene modifications, if there are other things, and new papaya disease, they are still able to pursue the current persons in those locations. So there are pluses and minuses.
I think that's how I understood it when I read it. So this is clarifying.
Any other on these matters? Councilmember.
Okay, I just have a question right now for Mrs. Milligan. Can you just mention just now that if there is something new that comes out, a disease, the papaya guys still can use a new product?
That's the way that reads, yes.
Can I get a couple minutes recess on this? And I want to talk to Lincoln.
Okay, I'll take a 5-minute recess.
That's the way it's same with everybody else who's GMO. Guys, hats today. This thing's hats. His head is
Okay, so what papaya people want to do is not mention that they're associated with genetic GMO. None. I mean, he still doesn't show up on time or stay all day. It's genetically modified. You mean don't pull them out as a separate exemption, but put them in and list them in there.
Comedy gold. She was like, oh, okay. It's like, encourage them. We need to vote it up. People don't get it. Defending him and defending Zendo. No, he's yeah, but watch out. What is he doing? The courtesy. What are you doing over here?
I came to get a replacement Social Security card at Social Security, and then from there I can.
Hilo, Mecca of the world, right?
Yeah, no more. I mean, they They only come twice a month, I think, Social Security. Then they don't come anymore, it's a video.
Did you go to the mall?
Yeah,
They only come twice a week.
something like that. It was
It's such a violation, by the way, y'all. Just so you know. This is all, they should have called him up to the table and asked him in front of everybody.
And then Billy allows them to use the company
Oh, yeah, yeah.
facility when they're set up. When they used to come, they used to come like an example, whatever. And Billy would open up one of the rooms for her.
You know who the blue shirt is? The blue Let's go talk to him. Come on, guys, let's rush the table. Well, gee, do I charge my battery again for a second? This looks like it's more than a minute. Or what?
You open the doors so they can come and continue the operations and you know, contaminated the soil, contaminated the neighbors, and they're going to be doing the same thing. How did you manage to be flat-sided, you know? Now you vanish him, but you allow him. You know, it's plain how this number will affect. You know, what's the effect? Just plain to once they go to registration, and then they will have to make sure that they're not going to contaminate the neighborhood. By sending by reporting, she said that she's looking for the look. I said, no. It's like you giving them the right to practice the law and they're going to put right. So can you explain how did you prevent the continuation of this GMO practice on papayas? So,
It's about rest. So we're going to do an ad hoc meeting every week. Let's talk about every week, please. So I asked her, because I don't really understand, if you move on to that, can we select questions? Because I don't think they have some of the right questions. So.
Okay, I call this meeting back to order, and Councilmember Onishi, you still have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so after listening to Ms. Wille's discussion.
Hang on, do you still need, are you asking?
Well, I might.
Yeah, so can you just sit back, and then if they do need you, then they can call you. Thank you.
So, listening to what Ms. Wille was saying is that, okay, so if there's any new disease that affects the papaya industry, then they will be able to utilize the resource, the genetic modified organ to conquer that disease or that whatever the virus that attacks them. And so, I guess then what I need to know is from the council is that as the body, do all members feel that papayas is safe for consumption? So I would like to hear from the council members to find out how they feel about.
I think with that,
As Mr. Kern has said on previous occasions, none of us are required to answer that question.
I didn't force you folks to. I just asked if anyone wanted to make a.
so, okay, so for clarification purposes, are you asking each council member if they want to answer what was the
Yeah,
question?
that they feel that the papayas is safe for consumption.
Okay, does anyone here want to answer the question? Please put your light on. Okay, so, Councilmember Yoshimoto,
What was, the question was whether papayas are safe?
for
Yes.
consumption. Councilmember Ilagan?
According to the information I got from Andrea, that the nutritional value, yes.
I would, based on that information too, in addition to the millions of dollars of studying that went in to get them into Japan, I will eat them. That's a separate issue of pollination and various things like that, but yeah.
Councilmember Eoff?
Okay, to the best of my knowledge at this time, and I would trust what our researcher, Andrea, has told, no, but you did tell us that the studies said that there was not too much, sure.
I am not an expert in papaya or rainbow papaya at all. You need to call in the people who are right here in Hilo, who study it all the time to tell you. I am not an expert in papaya.
Thank you. And
I can read that paper and tell you nutritionally, essential nutrients for humans. There's a lot more in a plant besides nutritional elements.
Thank you. And I think the question was, just from him to answer the question whether you feel right now, if so, I don't want to go into a long discussion. Is this a question? Okay, and yeah, whether it's appropriate or not, I'm still questioning that myself. However, you guys have the option to answer it.
Thank you, all you.
Okay. And seeing no other light on, you still have the floor. Are we timing, right? Thank you.
Well, at this time, because of hearing that, I want to withdraw communication 393.1.
Okay. Withdrawn. Is there any, Karen, you still have your light on? Is there further discussion on the amendment? Well, he's withdrawn it, there's no amendment. Now, so we're back to the discussion on the motion 113. So, Council Member Ford.
Thank you. On to 113 regarding the exemption section. When I read this, the genetically engineered papaya is exempt. Now that, to me, means they're exempt with what they've got today, the anti-ring spot virus gene that they've got in there. But it also means to me that if there is 10 more GMO traits that they want to put into that particular papaya, that they will still be allowed to do that, including pesticides and herbicides. There's nothing to say that in the future there won't be a pesticide or herbicide put into these genetically modified papayas that exist today, and they would be legal to be grown on the land where they are being grown right now because this exemption exists. I just want to make sure the council understands that what is today doesn't mean what's going to be there tomorrow, and it may have herbicides and pesticides. Thank you.
So, now with Council Member Yoshimoto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, Ms. Wille, so a question as to the registration section we have. Maybe I'm missing something here. So everyone that grows papayas, including the backyard farmers, just needs to register, or is there somewhere where it says it doesn't apply to a single person who's just in their backyard, just?
Yeah, so in terms of like the commercial growers, it's not including backyard, or if you happen to have one that's
Yeah,
in your
like
kitchen or something.
Does it say that? I must have. I'm just looking for it, because I don't see that.
She said
Yeah, take your time. No, that's just something that I think Ms. Redfeather had suggested that, but I see the point in registration in terms of accountability.
Yeah, it was supposed to have it, and I'll check. If it doesn't say commercial, that was the intention, and I'll look it over.
You're not intending to make everybody?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Councilmember Kern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in this, I don't see any area in this bill for any of the academic research that was in there before, like UH. Am I missing that?
To that, what I said was no open air. So all the research here is not open air. In fact, all the licenses are far more restrictive than what I've said. So,
okay, so one of my questions then would be, if we're giving the exemption to the papaya, let's say, and they are going to be doing some testing, the way that I read it, the way I think you said it, is that they still would be able to work with their papaya.
yes.
What if they need to test different? I'm not talking about like the open air that we are thinking about as far as Kauai, Monsanto, that stuff. But what if they need to test the papaya tree outside?
Well, I would refer that to the ad hoc committee. You know, I guess we're getting what if.
But that's a legit. I mean, if you're going to allow them to do it,
Yeah.
okay.
So I
They
would
would
say
have
they
to
are,
test.
since they're allowed to do GMO there, they're doing it whether they call it a test field or not a test field. Right now, it would be permitted. If we wanted to restrict it, we would need to amend my bill.
Got it. Thank you. I still stand that we should identify which experts we want in those fields and have them come in and be able to ask them the specific questions to get down to the exact detail and data that we need to make the the best decision we possibly can, and how we can maybe separate out having the virus resistant versus the Roundup Ready and all the other stuff that we want to complete with, as well as understanding how the horticultural industry fits in there. If it's going to be, I think we should just leave it alone. But it's, again, it's like we have the experts here. We have so much more information. That's what I was like.
And the question there is what we need to, in other words, pass a bill where we are now versus do as a follow-up, and that's all, you know, I'm trying to weigh, we're all trying to weigh. Hector Valenzuela was one of the people that came in here and spoke on that precise issue, and I think he would be a good person to bring in.
Okay, Councilmember Kanuha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I brought up last time when we were in discussion about open air testing, and for me, I don't think I'm completely against open air testing here on Boyd Island. If you want to do open air testing, do it someplace else, but not over here. If you want to do it inside a contained area, whatever, at the UH Scientific Research Center, whatever it is, that's fine. But open air testing on this, I'm definitely not going to vote for something like that. So I just wanted to state that. How are you with this thing?
Councilmember Wille.
I'm just wondering if it would be valuable at this time, if we're considering either bringing in other experts or created an ad hoc committee that could do that, or recommend them to come, if it would be wise to keep this in committee to further the discussion, identify the experts and the process through the ad hoc committee, and so I'm not going to propose postponing it at this time, but at some point in this discussion, I think that might be the path to take. Although I know we're anxious to adopt something, if we move it to council, it's harder to bring in the dialogue and the back and forth discussion. And also for the ad hoc committee to report back to this committee would be something I would like to leave open. So I'm not sure, I'm not going to make that motion, so I think I would like to hear further discussion.
Councilmember Ford? Thank you. Please remember, an ad hoc committee cannot have more than 4 council members. So if you're wanting to raise the level of knowledge on the council as a whole, the experts need to come and sit here and talk to all of us, so we all have the same information. So, I think that's important. If somebody really needs to have that information, then we need to get the expert in here. We all had the opportunity to call in experts today, and apparently no one did that except for the ones who voluntarily came in. So I appreciate all of you, whether you're pro or not, or against, it's okay. But I really am concerned, now that we're back on the main bill, I'd like to call up Mr. Ashida. I think this is something that we need to get out on the table.
I'm so glad you called earlier a bathroom break. I think there's a direct relationship to the likelihood of being called and having to go to the bathroom.
I understand, but Val gets the credit for that.
Thank you immensely for that. But good morning, Lincoln Ashida, Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Ashida. Mr. Ashida, one of the things that I have expressed concern about is that there's no enforcement capability here. The director of R&B is out of state. Her deputy is at a meeting, and currently the ag person in that department is a vacant position. We don't have anybody. But aside from all of that, even if they were here and they agreed to all of this, and there would be no problem, and we have the right as a council to set the policy who's going to do the enforcement. The concern that I have is that there is no appeal process. When I had talked to Ms. Garson, and I believe you have talked to her yourself, that was what she pointed out to me in the bill that was defeated earlier today, that this becomes an issue if you assign a department to be the enforcement arm and there's no appeal process, that you're in some violation of the law. Would you go ahead and talk about that, please?
Thank you, Ms. Ford. First of all, I think as a threshold matter, you don't need to attach any department to the bill. In other words, you could have a bill that just says this is what you can and cannot do, no mention of enforcement. You can do that. However, I think as we've seen in the past, that's not recommended because you've essentially passed the hollow bill. It even has, I think, the undesired consequence of, I think it really compromises public trust because you pass legislation that doesn't have teeth or an enforcement capability. That's something that I think is not recommended. That being said, generally most bills do have an administrative component, a department attached to it that's responsible for monitoring and enforcement, if that's what's necessary. Our main concern, and I think this is what Ms. Ford was getting at in her discussion with Ms. Garson, is if you do have an enforcement component on there, it must be afforded within the body of the bill and in practicality some provision that affords a person due process. In other words, if you're going to, especially if you're going to include a penalty provision, whether it be a criminal provision, a civil administrative provision, there has to be due process in there. When we looked at the various departments out there that are capable or have built in already either a board or commission or some mechanism that could accommodate these due process requirements, I think the most, again, this decision is yours, but this is just from our observation, perhaps the most, the department that's already equipped for that is environmental management. And that's so because they have a commission that is already established that can hear any and can adjudicate any violations, or if a violation, a decision is made by the director that there is a violation. R&D, I think, I know there's been some discussion, I did see some discussion of R&Ds in the department. Maybe a problem with that is if you look at the chartered responsibilities of R&D, they don't really quite fit in terms of what this bill hopes to accomplish. Parks and Rec, difficult because you get farther away from the mark. Problem with Parks and Rec, my recollection is there's a specific provision that rulemaking is necessary for them. So DEM sort of is a ready-made fit right now. Go ahead, Ms. Wayne.
Just also address Board of Appeals for Planning and Public Works.
Oh, yeah. What I think what Ms. Ford is getting at is the Board of Appeals is already established as the body that hears appeals, administrative appeals, and final decisions by both the Planning and Public Works Director respectfully. So, that being said, again, I think that if this council is moving forward with this bill and it's looking at passing some form of it, I guess it would be highly recommended that you at least have a department that's responsible for overseeing its enforcement. And with that enforcement, what's important for us to see as lawyers and for the community's benefit is that there's some due process that's addressed. And that due process to me has to be more than just, in my mind, just a decision, some bureaucratic decision. By having a board or a commission oversee that process, I think we further protect ourselves against any challenges of takings. So, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Let me run my time out and they can answer the questions. Based on Ms. Wille's bill, I did go to Laverne Amori, who is the director for R&D, and I asked her about the registration process. I knew she didn't have any kind of a board or commission that could do the due process, so we already resolved that. So I said, well, it's a little strange to me if we have the registration in R&D where that's the only agricultural position we've got is in R&D, but regardless, I said, it seems to me to be a little strange to put registration in that department, but the enforcement in either public works, planning, or my choice would be environmental management. She agreed with me. She thought it was a little unusual. And so I have a concern about that. It seemed to me that the registration should be in the same department where the enforcement is. And I will yield at this point if anyone else wants to. Sure, absolutely, sir.
I just wanted to follow up on what was just said by Ms. Ford, because I know that there had been discussion earlier today about possible delays. I think if we go the DEM route, I think the council may be obliged to send this to DEM Commission for review and comment. I'm not sure, but I think that might be a requirement. I gotta go look at the code, but because there was some expressed concern about potential delays, I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Ilagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to get back to the purpose of Bill 113. And it states the purpose of this article is to protect the Hawaii Island non-genetically modified agricultural crops and plants from genetically modified organisms cross-pollination. So I want to bring up Dr. Gonzalez. If you could state your name and title.
I'm Dennis Gonzalez. I'm a retired researcher.
I want to ask you, how does the pollination of these GM papayas work?
The pollination of papaya in Hawaii are currently almost self-pollinated because commercially they sex out for the hermaphrodite papaya. And the way the structure of the flower is by the time the flower opens, you have much of the pollen that's already pollinated the female part of the hermaphrodite. And so that's commercial practice. Now, the sole papayas, the ones that are grown, they only have the female and the hermaphrodite counterpart. There's no male counterpart right now. So that's the way it's done. Much of the pollination is due to that, and our data on extensive testing of gene flow show that yes, the amount of pollen flow according to the distance is very low.
And what you mentioned, are you saying that bees or any type of, like the wind, does it carry the pollen anywhere?
For the hermaphrodite plants, not a female has the pollen, for the hermaphrodite plants, they can carry it, but the way the flower is structured, by the time they open, the pollen had already matured and actually pollinated the female counterpart of that flower. But yes, you can have pollen flow. In our studies where we did it 12 feet away, we had a 0.74, and 50 feet away, we could not detect it. Now, that doesn't mean that if you check a million fruits, you might find it, but when we checked 90 seeds out of papaya in rows that were 50 feet away, we could not detect the pollen juice.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, if I'm understanding correctly, if the bee does carry it, it becomes infertile, that pollen?
I think if the bees, I don't think the pollen would become infertile.
Okay.
I think it's just that the way the flowers are structured, the bee would not have much chance to actually get into and have pollen.
I see. They can carry the pollen, but transferring it to another plant would be very difficult.
Yeah, and if you read the literature, bees are not seen as the primary member of the insect that would transfer the genes of the hermaphrodite plant.
Thank you. And thank you for those answers. So I wanted to get to the cross-pollination because the reason why we have all these provisions is because we want to preserve the Hawaii Island unique and vulnerable ecosystem while promoting the cultural heritage and indigenous agriculture practices. It's because of the cross-pollination. That's the purpose of this bill. Now, as you understand, it's case by case with this GM crops. And from what I've just heard with papaya, with their case, it's very unlikely for a cross-pollination with papayas. So what other, this is a rhetorical question, what other crops are there in currently in the Big Island? Because what we are exempting are the crops that's currently in the Big Island. So I want to get that question answered, but I don't know who to ask. So thank you.
Thank you, and after Ms. Ford, I want to talk about, our recess and our next meeting. Councilmember Ford? Thank you, Doc. I don't know if you're a PhD, but... Okay, Doctor, would you please come forward? And please state your name one more time.
I am Dennis Gonzalez. I got my bachelor's and master's from the University of Hawaii, and I got my PhD from the University of California in 1972.
It's in biology, right?
Yeah, in plant pathology.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to fertilization in papaya. In the rainbow papaya, we have basically the male produces only pollen, a female, which only has the pistil to receive the pollen, and the hermaphrodite. And commercially, everybody, including myself, which doesn't grow that papaya, but I do grow papayas, grows hermaphrodites. And they are about 99+% self-pollinated. I agree completely. But let's say somebody buys one of your papayas and goes out in the backyard and plants seed. All three are going to come up. And if a person doesn't know what they're doing, that to weed out the females and weed out the males and keep the hermaphrodites, what's going to happen is they're going to have a male flower open and it's going to be able to spread its pollen windborne. Is that correct?
Yes, but I also wanted to mention that the Hawaiian solo papaya, the solo papaya that is grown, does not have male plants.
All right, it's only the rainbow papaya.
No, the rainbow papaya is a solo papaya, and that has no male.
No male. So your commercial papayas
It's
you're talking
only
about,
hermaphrodite
hermaphrodite and
and
females. Okay, so the hermaphrodite has to open up completely as a mature flower for the pollen to actually be windblown at that point. But if somebody has it in their backyard, you know, and they're not just picking it expeditiously, shall we say, well, it's going to pollinate before it gets a papaya going on it. So I just want to make sure that even though in your studies you show a less than 1% drift into the next rows, that there is pollen that is blown. It doesn't take a honeybee to get that pollen out there, but the honeybees can't, at least in my papayas, they can't get into the flower at all. And so the honeybee is not the issue on the papaya. Honeybees are 30% of our food crops and a lot of our flowers, but not orchids. Thank you for letting me ask you that question.
When we had the last discussion, we talked about having this meeting here on Friday, and even for just 4 hours was worth it, because some of us had to leave, including me, Dru, I think, Councilmember Kern. So I just want to get a consensus from the group on how do we move from here. When do we, you know, if Ms. Wille is willing to recess and come back with.
I'd like to recess, but I know people are going away. Otherwise, I would say Tuesday, but I think Drew's away, and otherwise, I think, Jay, when I think we looked at it, we thought it might be all the way to the, was it the night, our next meeting is here in Hilo, and either the 16th or the 19th. Dru, I don't know when. 16th?
The 17th is committee.
16th is fine?
19th is fine.
19th.
The 17th, 18th in Hilo. So we have 17 committee meetings, council meetings on the 18th. So we're looking at the 19th to reconvene.
I'm not available on the 19th. I have things that were scheduled 6 months ago, so no, I can't do the 19th.
Okay, I thought you said you could one.
No, I could do next week, I think we had talked about. We're looking at next week, but then people's travel plans came up. So then we looked at committee days, what we're thinking about, because that's when everyone is going to be available. So
can we check on the committee day with the public?
Okay, but, okay, when we met with you and I and Brenda, we had looked at the 19th as available. I wrote that down, and that was good, and that was the error.
So now he's not available, so Brenda?
I can't do the 19th too.
Okay, maybe then on committee day.
But the 16th, I mean, I'm free, but I don't think Mr. Kanuha is. Dru, are you back yet on the 16th?
Yeah, I'm back. I have meetings all the morning. We'll cancel them more.
I am, I think I'm flying in the morning of the 16th. I will just, I'll be back for the next council meeting on the 17th, 18th. Councilmember Ford?
I'm available anytime for this meeting, but as I'll remind you, as I said before, I'm sorry, I'm available anytime for this meeting. But as I mentioned before, on the 17th, I do have a major, what I consider to be a major bill that will probably bring in a lot of testifiers to hear that bill. I don't want to go into the bill right now.
Okay, so what about the Friday the 20th? If we commit a whole day to that, on Friday the 20th?
I'm not gonna be on.
Okay, so what will, go ahead.
I'd just like to ask Ms. Ford if it would be worth postponing her bill schedule that she wanted to put on the 17th so we could continue this meeting.
No, it's a very big bill, and I have advised everybody, I've already done my email blast and said, everybody come in on the 17th to testify. I am not willing to, I've been trying to work on this bill for many months, and we finally got it in a form that it's going to appear, and I'm not willing to tell everybody, don't show up on that particular day, so no.
Well, then if there's not too many other committee agenda items for that day, we could take the testimony for that bill and then see how the timing is and then go into, we're not taking any more testimony on this bill, so we could go into our discussion.
I have things on that agenda, but I would move them to a later date. If it worked out the afternoon of the 16th,
17th?
I would be open for that. I know Ms. Poindexter said she wanted to check, but I don't have any problem with doing half the days. I feel like 5 hours or, anyway, if people were willing to do the afternoon of the 16th, well, okay.
What's going on, Drew?
If not, I'll remove the things I have on the 17th.
I have a major bill that day too.
The 17th.
So what about the afternoon of the 16th then? 1:30 on the 16th. And then we're here for the 17th.
Yeah, I just need to check, I think I'm back at 10, and then I can be here, because I just flying to Hilo.
Where are you flying?
To Hilo. So that would work on the afternoons.
I need to check my calendar on the 16th. So we can have a 1 minute.
Okay, we can take a 5-minute recess. We're going to just double check calendars.
Does he never have his calendar with him?